Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder three. Strange things that happen here. How stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
Welcome to Strange Things, broadcasting from the Raimundo Rios Mayo Library in Arkansas. Welcome to Strange Things. I'm your host, Chris James. This is Session 1, Episode Number 3, May 14th, 2016. Tonight's subject will be Bigfoot. Before we get going on the Bigfoot subject, last week as we were closing down the show, I'd mentioned the flying manta ray of Laredo, Texas. Very few people have ever even heard of this subject. Of all the strange ways for me to discover it, I had to read about it from a website called Phantoms and Monsters, run by a man named Lon Strickler, who is up in Pennsylvania. Someone had written to him and told him in 2013, a man was driving on Loop 20 at about 1:20 p.m. when he saw what looked like a grayish-white manta ray flying over his car. It was coming from Lake Casablanca, here in Laredo, and flying towards the golf course. It was roughly 3 feet wide, maybe bigger or smaller, and it seemed to be gliding through the air. There were no wings, as far as the witness could see. It just looked like a manta ray, literally. It passed about 30 feet in front of him, and he watched it for about 10 seconds. It looked as if it was swimming through the air. What could this creature be? He was a bit freaked out by the sighting. Once he arrived at home, he searched the internet and found there were several other people who had seen similar creatures throughout the United States. For more information on the flying manta ray or just anything paranormal, check out phantomandmonsters.com. Long before there was Bigfoot, what people referred to was the wild man, the hairy man, or Sasquatch, depending on which tribe you're dealing with. The term Bigfoot came from an incident that happened in California back in 1958, the same year I was born. A man named Jerry Crew was operating a bulldozer. He was working near a place called Bluff Creek, which if you're into Bigfoot, you'll recognize that name. If not, you'll hear more about it in a bit. He was a staunch member of the Baptist Church, and he got real upset when people started accusing him of lying after telling his story. He had come to work one morning and discovered there were large footprints all the way around his bulldozer. They ran down the road and off into the bushes. He didn't like being called a liar. It kind of got him upset. So he went back to the job site, took some plaster, made a big cast of the footprint, and he took it to the local newspaper. The footprint was about 16 inches long, and it was a bare foot, which at that time of year it was a bit cold out. They ran down the side of a hill, around the bulldozer, and down another hill. A person doing this would have fallen because the hill was about a 75-degree slope. And yet, whoever had left these footprints had no difficulty traversing this location. The stride, the distance between each foot, was between 45 and 60 inches. True, a person could do this if they were running, but if you ever tried running with large slabs of wood strapped to your feet, you'd find out real quickly this isn't as easy as it sounds. Mr. Crew took his plaster cast into town to the local newspaper, and at the local newspaper was when they decided to call this creature Bigfoot. The subcontractor in charge of the road that they were building was named Ray Wallace. He got mad when he found out that someone was running around the job site leaving these large footprints. So he decided he would get somebody to look into it, find out who's messing with their equipment at night, and do something to this person. So he hired a couple of men. One of them was named, Bob Rizal. The other was named Ray Kerr. The idea was that these two would work during the day on the road crew, and then at night they would go looking to see if they could figure out who was messing with the equipment at night, who was running around the job site. Now they're in the middle of nowhere, literally. Nothing but trees. The road they were building would be the first means of transportation through the area ever developed. The two men looking for the person that was causing these tracks, they even went so far as to try using dogs. They would take the dogs out at night and they would run them through the brush trying to find who was leaving these large footprints. Unfortunately, they lost the dogs. They have no idea what happened to them. They simply disappeared into the brush one day, never to return. The man, Ray Wallace, several people have accused him of perpetrating this hoax. However, in the course of his career, Mr. Wallace would spend a lot of his own money looking into the Bigfoot sightings. He would go around to the local tribes and he would speak to the village elders, asking them questions about what they knew of this creature that was leaving these large footprints. One of the locals, an elder named Oscar Mack, told Mr. Wallace, the Bigfoot were run out of this country by the miners back in 1848 and 1849. Before that, there were quite a few of them around here. Ray Wallace continued trying to figure out what was causing these footprints. However, when he did pass away, his family came out and pretty much tried to convince the world that perhaps he was the cause of these footprints. However, a man named Bud Walton, who was one of the road crew workers, had this to say about that. It has been said Ray Wallace made the tracks Jerry Crew found. This could not be farther from the actual truth. When the tracks were made, Ray was not in the area. He was out of town. I was one of the lucky ones that saw the tracks before the big craze started. It's hard to find out whether or not Mr. Wallace would have done such a thing. Like I said, if you've ever tried strapping a board to your foot, try running down a road. It's not very easy to do. Ray Wallace was known as a bit of a joker, but that doesn't mean that he was the cause of these footprints. We'll be back shortly after a few brief messages. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio.
Little Farm, más de 30 especialidades de pechuga de pollo, fresco, natural, empanizado, congelado, preparado. Visítanos en Lincoln 3130 esquina con Morelos, Colonia Juárez, al teléfono 719-3044. Fácil de cocinar en casa. Little Farm.
En RG Servicios Aduanales y Ramírez Distribution Services contamos con un equipo de profesionales, técnicos en comercio exterior, ejecutivos de cuenta, tramitadores y personal administrativo que se encargará de orientarlo y mantenerlo oportunamente informado de todos los cambios en materia aduanera y procedimientos relacionados con el despacho de sus mercancías. RG Servicios Aduanales, Coahuila 1520 Nuevo Laredo, 867-719-1804 y Ramírez Distribution Services 501 Nafta Boulevard, Laredo, Texas, 956-726-8940.
Looking for a great cup of coffee? The Organic Man Coffee Shop at 1108 Lincoln, downtown Laredo, Texas. Serving only the best organic coffee in the world. Not a coffee person? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and iced drinks if that's your drink of choice. The Organic Man Coffee Shop, 1108 Lincoln, downtown Laredo, just a half block west of the Mercado.
We gotta say goodbye.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arcanasa Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arcanasa Radio.
You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James. Welcome back. If you're interested in the subject of Bigfoot, I'd like to invite you to check out the Jefferson, Texas Bigfoot Conference coming up in October 15th of this year. The guest speakers will be Dr. Jeff Meldrum, the author of a book, Legends Meet Science. Lyle Blackburn, another author, wrote the story The Beast of Boggy Creek. He is also the host of Monsters and Mysteries in America. Ken Gerhardt, author of Flying Humanoids, amongst other books, and star of Missing in Alaska, will be there. Chester Moore, outdoor writer-photographer from Orange, Texas, and saltwater editor of Texas Fish and Game magazine, will be presenting. Last but not least, Ashen Brown will be there. She's a scientist and author. She wrote the Secret of Blackjack Woods series. Come on up to Jefferson. It's only a 500-mile drive, but it's well worth the trip. The Patterson-Gimlin film. This is probably the second most investigated film ever made. The only film with more scientists looking at it would be the Zapruder film from the JFK assassination. Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, the afternoon of October 20th, 1967, filmed what is probably the most historic wildlife or deep woods video ever made. If you're into the Bigfoot community, it's referred to as the P&G film. The creature has been named Patty, after Roger Patterson. Roger Patterson had become interested in the Bigfoot subject, and he decided he wanted to see about getting a video of this creature. He'd gotten with Bob Gimlin because he knew that Bob Gimlin was a very good horseman. He was an expert in the outdoors, and if anyone could get back into the area where they wanted to film, it would be Bob. So Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin got together. They rode out into the middle of the Bluff Creek area, the same location where the road was being put together. They had to use horses to get back in there because it was just so thick. There weren't any roads, there weren't any trails to take. They got back into the area. Roger Patterson had taken the camera and he would videotape various things as they went by. Wildlife, trees, the location that they were at. Kind of building a background for his movie if he was ever make it. As they came across the creek, suddenly they noticed a large, hair-covered creature walking along the edge of the creek. Roger Patterson's horse reared up. It was frightened by whatever this thing was. Roger fell from the back of his horse, and then the horse landed on top of him. He was scrambling, trying to get out from under his horse, and at the same time he was trying to pull his camera out of the saddlebags. He was more focused on getting a shot of the Bigfoot with his camera than getting himself out from under the horse. Finally, he was able to get out. He got the camera, he stood up, and that's when he started filming. If you watch the P&G film, you're probably wondering, why doesn't he hold that camera still? He was running along the edge of the creek trying to get a good film of this creature. At about frame 352. You'll notice that the creature turns its head and it looks back at Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin. What had happened at that moment, Roger was just a little bit nervous. He was afraid that this creature just might attack. So he yelled to Bob, "Cover me." Bob Gimlin pulled a .30-30 rifle out of his saddle holster and levered around into the chamber. That's when the creature turns, looks back at the two men, and then simply continues walking. If that had been a person in a costume, and they heard the sound of somebody making a rifle deadly and ready to shoot, don't you think they would have ducked, or put their hands up in the air and yelled, "Don't shoot," or taken some kind of defensive action? Instead, Patty, the Bigfoot in the movie, just kept walking along the riverbank like she didn't know what was going on. Roger Patterson managed to film a few feet of the creature walking away. They did find footprints along the bank of the creek. It started to rain. Bob Gimlin didn't want to stay out in the woods in the rain because it was his truck that they were towing the horse trailer with. He had crossed a river with the truck, and it was only a two-wheel drive vehicle. He was concerned that if the river got too high, they wouldn't be able to get back to the town. Unlike Roger Patterson, Bob Gimlin had a job to go to in the morning, and he wasn't about to stay out in the woods looking for this hair-covered creature and lose his job over it. So him and Roger Patterson packed up their gear, got the horses back to the trailer, loaded up their equipment. Now, they had seen some footprints. They tried covering them with some boards to keep the rain off of them, but rain does tend to wash things away. They get back to town. Roger immediately took the film, had it processed so they could see what they had captured on the video. The camera they were using was an old-style camera. It used film. It wasn't like today where you have a digital camera. You had to take the film, get it processed. Once he had the film in hand, he began traveling around the country showing it to people in a means of, this is what I caught out in the woods, and if you'd give me a few dollars, I'll go back and look some more. He was trying to make a living showing this video to people. Bob, on the other hand, well, he had a job to go to, and he was more than happy to go back to his job. However, he did support Roger in everything he said about the creature. Since the film has come out, there have been several people who have come forward and said, "I was the man in the suit." The latest one is a man named Bob Hieronymus. 13 different people have claimed to have been the man in the suit. All these people are constantly saying that Roger Patterson made this suit and that they were wearing it. When asked how he made the suit, well, they couldn't really answer that question. When asked what did he do with the suit, they couldn't answer that question either. If Roger Patterson had actually made the suit, he was wasting his time showing the film in theaters. He should have gone straight to Hollywood, showed it to the experts out there and said, "See what kind of suit I can make?" They would have hired him on the spot. He would have made millions of dollars as a Hollywood special effects person. Instead, Roger Patterson, to his dying day, continued looking for more evidence of Bigfoot. Even though he was dying from cancer, he was still intent on finding this creature. Bob Gimlin is still alive today. He was interviewed on the radio by a man named, now I can't find the guy's name. Anyway, he was interviewed. The host of the show edited Bob's conversation. And when he played it out over the radio, it sounded as if Bob was saying that he thought maybe there was a man in the suit. Bob Gimlin wasn't too happy about that interview. He said, "That's not what I said, and that's not what it should have been on the radio." To this day, Bob Gimlin travels about the country, attending various conferences. I met him up in Tyler, Texas at the Bigfoot conference. At that conference, Bob Gimlin said, as far as he knew, this was no hoax. Roger Patterson did not make the costume, and it was not a man in a suit. People keep accusing Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson of making lots of money off of this film. To begin with, Bob Gimlin doesn't own the film. It belongs to Roger Patterson's wife. She has it at home, but she's not making any money showing it to anyone. All we know for a fact is that Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson caught something on film that has been examined by scientists since it happened, and so far no one has been able to say, yes, that's a man in a costume, or nope, that's nobody in a costume that we've ever seen. The area around Bluff Creek has been notorious for sightings of large hair-covered creatures, even to this day. So if you're ever in California, out around the Bluff Creek area, keep your eyes open. You just might see something that you can't explain either. I have a book out called Creatures. It's a work of fiction, but if you like Bigfoot, if you like that sort of thing for reading, check it out. It's available at Amazon.com. I thought it was pretty good, but then I wrote it. Bigfoot enthusiasts tend to have one simple thing in common. A movie came out back in 1972 called The Legend of Boggy Creek. In the movie, it depicts a town, Fouke, Arkansas, where numerous sightings of this creature had taken place back in the 50s. The man that made the movie, Charles B. Pierce, didn't have a whole lot of money to make a movie with. So what he did was he got the townspeople to play themselves in the movie. He would say, action. They would do their part. And then he would say, cut. And that's good enough. Everything was one take. So you better get it right the first time. He put together this movie, 35mm camera, took it out, had it developed, and then began showing at theaters, where I got to see the movie in the first place. 1973, I believe. Not a Hollywood movie. You watch it, you'll know that this was a low-budget film. However, people that watched it today have gone on to become Bigfoot hunters. Some of the cast of the TV show, Finding Bigfoot, they will say their first exposure to Bigfoot was this movie, The Legend of Boggy Creek. Mr. Lyle Blackburn, writer, singer, musician, and actor, has a book out called The Beast of Boggy Creek. It is the true story of the Fouke monster. He goes into great detail about how the movie was made, how it was put forth, and who all was in the movie. If you're interested, check out Lyle Blackburn's The Beast of Boggy Creek, available at, of course, Amazon.com. There's an anthropologist named Kathy Moskowitz-Strain. She has been studying native tribes all over the United States and Canada. She says that, surprisingly, no matter where the tribe is located, somewhere in their history they have a legend of a large, hair-covered creature, or man, who lives out in the woods. She's been studying the phenomenon for years, and she said they all have some kind of a legend like that. These tribes don't have anything in common other than being in the United States. Some are in Florida, some are in Washington State. Some are in California, and others are up in Maine. No matter where you go, there is some story about a large, hair-covered man who lives out in the woods. They have a very different name for these creatures, depending on which part of the country you're in as to what they will call the creature. In Dakotas, the Dakota Sioux, they refer to the Bigfoot as the Big Elder Brother. The Seminole Indians call him the Tall Man. Ogallala, which is the Lakota Sioux, refer to him as the Big Man. The Hoopa Indians call him the Boss of the Woods. Another version, they call him Sasquatch. The Taos Indians refer to him as the Big Person. All these different hair-covered creatures, they tend to be just someone who lives out in the woods. Don't mess with him. He won't mess with you. Show him respect. The Hoopa tribe believe that if you're out in the woods and you caught 2 fish, you're walking back to your campsite and you encounter the Bigfoot, the boss of the woods, you should give him one of your 2 fish as an offering and then continue on your way. Then there are the other tribes. The Zuni Indians refer to him as the Cannibal Demon. The Kintalt Indians refer to him as the Devil of the Forest. The Yakima Indians refer to them as Stick Indians. More on the Stick Indians momentarily. But first, let's break for this brief commercial message. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio.
Little Farm, más de 30 especialidades de pechuga de pollo, fresco, natural, empanizado, congelado, preparado. Visítanos en Lincoln 3130 esquina con Morelos, Colonia Juárez, al teléfono 719-3044. Fácil de cocinar en casa. Little Farm.
Looking for a great cup of coffee? The Organic Man Coffee Shop at 1108 Lincoln, downtown Laredo, Texas. Serving only the best organic coffee in the world. Not a coffee person? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and iced drinks if that's your drink of choice. The Organic Man Coffee Shop, 1108 Lincoln, downtown Laredo, just a half block west of the Mercado.
Though we gotta say goodbye.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arkanasa Radio. Quédate con nosotros, estás escuchando Arkanasa Radio.
You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James. Welcome back. Okay, the Stick Indians. The Yakima tribe, I believe they are mostly in the Washington, Oregon area, refer to this creature. It's a malevolent and extremely dangerous forest spirit. Details about the Stick Indian vary from tribe to tribe. They're described as large, hairy, Bigfoot-like creatures. Some traditions, Stick Indians have powers to paralyze, hypnotize, or cause a person to go insane. They will entice people into the woods by making various sounds, whistling, laughter, just things you wouldn't expect to hear out in the woods. Stick Indians may eat people who fall prey to them. They're said to kidnap children and molest women. They also take aggressive revenge against people who injure or disrespect them, no matter whether it's intentional or not. Not too many traditions or legends regarding the Stick Indians have been recorded, in part due to taboos relating to these deadly creatures. The Stick Indian is an English euphemism. Saying the actual name of these beings in public is considered to be provoking their attacks in some tribes, a belief many native people today still adhere to. They choose not to refer to the creature by its actual name. They use the English version as well. How is it there are so many stories about a huge hair-covered creature living in the woods. And if you're in the woods, you want to be able to see what you're looking at. If you're looking at a large, blurry creature, perhaps it's time to go get your eyes checked. Swing by Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte. See about getting a pair of glasses so you can actually see what you're looking at. What is the best place to see a Bigfoot? The vast majority of sightings have been around pine trees. There's something about pine trees, pine forests that the creature seems to like. Could be that there's a lot of food to be found. Also that in the wintertime, when all the other trees drop their leaves, the pine tree stays bushy. The pine needles stay throughout the winter. This would give a large hair-covered creature some place to hide. So, if you're wondering why we don't have any Bigfoot sightings in and around Laredo, we don't have a lot of pine trees either. They like a wet climate. Up around the piney woods, the Jefferson, Texas area, up around Texarkana, up into Oklahoma, and Arkansas, Louisiana. Out in the woods where there's a constant rainfall. It allows things to grow. It keeps the climate damp. Apparently, Bigfoot, the hair-covered creature, likes this kind of an atmosphere. They like water, an available source. Large rivers, ponds, lakes. When you're covered with hair and running around out in the woods, I guess you would get hot, you'd get thirsty. You want to be able to drink something. So areas where there's lots of available water, this is where you're going to find the Bigfoot. The trees allow for cover and concealment. Even in the Himalayas, a lot of the creature sightings have been down in the wooded areas, not so much on top of the mountains. The creature doesn't want to just walk around out where anybody can see him, so they like to have cover and concealment. A lot of Bigfoot researchers like using trail cams. They set these things up all over the place. They're trying to catch a Bigfoot walking through the woods without having to actually sit out there in the woods with the camera like Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin had done. Trail cams are set off by an electronical signal that picks up the movement. It's almost like radar. Could it be that the Bigfoot creatures can perceive this electronic signal? I know when I used to try to take pictures of my dog, if I took my camera out and aimed it at her, she'd sit there and stare at me like, what's that? However, when I turned the camera on and it emitted that signal that would cause the camera to focus on the dog, suddenly she would get all nervous and try and hide. If a dog can tell when a camera's being aimed at him, why couldn't Bigfoot? This could be why all these game cameras set up all over the country, so far they have failed to catch any good photographs of Bigfoot. The PNG film was shot on a film camera. Had to be focused manually. It had to be turned on and off manually. Maybe that's what the Bigfoot hunters need to do, is stop using all these electronic gadgets and go back to the manual way of doing things. Perhaps they would have better success. Tree knocking. You see the guys out in the woods with the limbs of trees or baseball bats or whatever they happen to have, and they start pounding on the side of a tree, and then they hear somebody else pounding on a tree, and this could be, or maybe it's not, a Bigfoot responding. Who's to say for sure? No one's ever actually seen Bigfoot beating on a tree. This is a primate activity. If Bigfoot isn't really a primate, would he really be doing such a thing? A friend of mine up in Canada, John Kirk III, he says Bigfoot doesn't beat on trees. He also says that Bigfoot doesn't have a thumb and can't hang on to the tree limb. Until we actually shake hands with a Bigfoot, That's one thing we'll not know for sure. Call blasting and howling. If you're out in the woods and you hear Bigfoot howling off on the next hill, unfortunately these days you can't say that's a Bigfoot or that's somebody with a recording of Bigfoot hollering. It has become so prevalent that any sound you hear out in the woods has to be suspect as to whether it's the real thing or whether it's somebody with a recording device. I have heard several people that make a really good Bigfoot howl, some not so good, but until we actually meet up with a Bigfoot and find out what they sound like, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to use that as evidence that there's a creature out there. We've had scientists, some Bigfoot enthusiasts and some not so enthusiastic, who will come out and make a statement regarding Bigfoot. I've heard one individual said that Bigfoot is just a large ape. And I've heard others say Bigfoot is closer to human. We don't know. We're not going to know until we actually either find a Bigfoot and sit down and talk to him, or find a body somewhere out in the woods and actually manage to examine it. Regardless of whether or not we ever actually see one, ever actually talk to one, there are still going to be people that are going to say, oh, that's a hoax, that's not real. That's just the world we live in. Tom Slick. Some people will recognize that name. Some people might not know who he is. Tom Slick was a Texas oil man. He made a ton of money. He took over a business started by his parents, continued running it successfully, made a lot of money. He had several airplanes, he had garages full of cars, and he had an interest that a lot of people don't know anything about. Tom Slick was very much into the Yeti, or Bigfoot. Tom was so interested, when he wasn't in the Himalayas himself looking for Bigfoot, he would hire other men to go out for months at a time. Sit on the side of this hill, sit in this cave, take this camera with you. See if you can't get a photograph, a picture, a piece of film of a Bigfoot-type creature. His entire life, Tom was very much into this sort of thing. If you'd like to read the story, the book is called Tom Slick, True Life Encounters in Cryptozoology by Lauren Coleman. It's a very good book. I've read it. I highly recommend you pick up a copy and have a look yourself. There's another creature out there called the Dogmen. Linda Godfrey, a news reporter from the Wisconsin area, first encountered these creatures. The initial report was it was a werewolf. Then, after looking into it a bit, they began calling them dogmen. Some of the dogmen reports, it has been theorized, could possibly have actually been a Bigfoot sighting. Not all of them. Certain reports say that the creature had a muzzle like a dog. It had a head like a dog. They also have been known to have the backwards facing legs. You look at a dog's knee, it's pointed the wrong direction. There's no telling for a fact whether what these people are reporting is Bigfoot or whether or not it's a different species of creature. The Beast of Bray Road, one example of the story, if you're interested, it's by Linda Godfrey. She documents dozens of reports all over the northern part of the country. They don't know if it's a different species or could this possibly be Bigfoot mistaken as being something else. There are lots of people out in the woods. They've got cameras, they've got video cameras, they've got still cameras. They're all out there looking for the same thing. They're looking for a large, hair-covered creature. I hope they have nothing but the best of success. But then part of me hopes they never solve this mystery. What would the world be without mysteries to think about? When they do finally find a Bigfoot, when they have one on display somewhere, suddenly the mainstream scientists are going to waltz in and they're going to say, okay, we're in charge of this now. You people can go do something else. And all the Bigfoot researchers are going to have to find something else to look into. Perhaps they'll start looking into the Loch Ness Monster. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James.
Little Farm, más de 30 especialidades de pechuga de pollo, fresco, natural, empanizado, congelado, preparado. Visítanos en Lincoln 3130 esquina con Morelos, Colonia Juárez, al teléfono 719-3044. Fácil de cocinar en casa. Little Farm.
En RG Servicios Aduanales y Ramírez Distribution Services contamos con un equipo de profesionales técnicos en comercio exterior, ejecutivos de cuenta, tramitadores y personal administrativo que se encargará de orientarlo y mantenerlo oportunamente informado de todos los cambios en materia aduanera y procedimientos relacionados con el despacho de sus mercancías. RG Servicios Aduanales, Coahuila 1520 Nuevo Laredo, 867-719-1804 y Ramírez Distribution Services, 501 Nafta Boulevard, Laredo, Texas, 956-726-8940.
Looking for a great cup of coffee? The Organic Man Coffee Shop at 1108 Lincoln, downtown Laredo, Texas. Serving only the best organic coffee in the world. Not a coffee person? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and iced drinks if that's your drink of choice. The Organic Man Coffee Shop, 1108 Lincoln, downtown Laredo, just a half block west of the Mercado.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arcanelza Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arcanelza Radio.
You're listening to Arcanasa Radio. Welcome back. There are as many theories about what Bigfoot is as there are Bigfoot sightings. Some people would say it's nothing but a large ape. Other people would say, yeah, it's a figment of your imagination. All those people that are reporting seeing Bigfoot, they're all hallucinating. Somewhere in the thousands. Some people, some tribes of Indians especially, say that Bigfoot is a trans-dimensional being. What does that mean? It's a creature that passes from one dimension to another, either by whim or by accident. This would explain why, in some instances, people are tracking a Bigfoot through the snow or through the mud, and the track may go for miles, and suddenly it disappears, as if the person they're following, the creature, vanished. Now, I know back when I used to work for the government, and part of my job was to track people. Yeah, once in a while the footprints would vanish. Usually that was caused by the person themselves not wanting to be found. They would go to all kinds of extreme methods to get rid of their footprints. Could Bigfoot be doing something like that? Walks down a trail, suddenly realizes, oh shoot, I'm leaving footprints. Grabs a brush and starts dusting away the footprints. A lot of people will agree Bigfoot does seem to be a lot smarter than a gorilla, a chimpanzee, or an orangutan. So the possibility that Bigfoot might be from some other dimension where he's completely surrounded by other hair-covered creatures. Perhaps on occasion Bigfoot has gone home and he said, I saw one out in the woods. It was about 6 feet tall and it was pink. It didn't have hardly any hair. And all the other Bigfoot looks at him and goes, you need to stop drinking whatever it is you're drinking. Until we actually have Bigfoot come into the studio, sit down at a desk and start an interview, it would be really nice if Art Bell were the one conducting that interview. Until that happens, no one can actually say that Bigfoot is a large ape, humanoid, person, maybe a creature from another dimension. That's the whole thing about the mysteries. We don't know. And until we know, it will continue being a mystery. If you're interested in the subject of Bigfoot, like I said earlier, the Jefferson Bigfoot Conference, brought to you by the Texas Bigfoot Research Center, Craig Woolheater, the founder of the organization. It's October 15th. It's only a 500-mile drive. Take 59, drive northeast till you hit about 500 miles, look for the town on your right. Try not to miss it. It's a little bitty town. It is said to be one of the most haunted cities in the state of Texas. It's well worth the effort. Think about it. You've got a few months. Join us in Jefferson for the Texas Bigfoot Research Center's conference. The story of Bigfoot is also coming to us from Europe, from Australia, from China. There have been Bigfoot sightings just about every country on the planet. In China, they refer to him as the Yeren. In Australia, he's the Yowie. Different locations have different stories as to what the Bigfoot do. Some will say they eat vegetables and fruit. They run around out in the woods. They're like caretakers of nature. Then you have the little more violent aspect. They are meat eaters. They kill deer and other animals, and that's what they eat. Then you have the stories from the Indians where they say they eat people. So depending on which Bigfoot you're dealing with will tell you whether or not you're going to survive or not. I have noticed from a lot of interviews from people who have seen Bigfoot, for example, if it's one of the Hoopa Indians and he stumbles across Bigfoot and he offers the creature half of whatever he has on him, be it fish, mushrooms, plants, vegetables, it's looked at as if it was a chance encounter with a benevolent creature. Then you have other encounters. A hunter, he's out in the woods, he's got his rifle, he's got his pistol, he's got a knife. He stumbles across Bigfoot and they will say, I was terrified. It was all I could do not to pass out. They sometimes go as far as to aim their weapon at the creature and then realize that whatever small firearm they're holding, be it a .30-06 or a shotgun, they tend to say, it didn't seem big enough. As if this creature were somehow passing on the thought. That scrawny little rifle isn't anything to me. There have been reports where hunters have actually shot at Bigfoot. There is also a story of a man who claimed to have shot a Bigfoot. His story is believable when you hear it. It sounds rather horrible when you actually listen to the man tell how he shot this creature. It bled to death. He held it in his arms as it breathed its last. It was believable up until they took his boots and examined them and discovered that there was no blood on any of his clothing. Whether the guy hallucinated killing a creature or not, who's to say? But there are thousands of stories out there of people encountering Bigfoot in the woods. Sometimes it's a friendly encounter, and sometimes it's a life-changing, scary moment. I've heard from some hunters who have said they're never going back out in the woods again. They were that terrified. And then I've heard of other people who they want to go back and see if they can encounter Bigfoot again. It's a strange world we live in, and it just wouldn't be nearly as much fun to live in if it wasn't strange. That's our show for this evening. I hope you've enjoyed it, listening as much as I've enjoyed having it. Next week, perhaps, we will have a show on the chupacabras. Until then, stay tuned in and hope you join us again. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man, the same murder 3? Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met?